Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, and this is episode 43. Before I introduce you to today's guest, I want to make sure that you know where you can find everything talked about in today's episode, as well as information on the Naked Communication book, how to work with me, other episodes. All of that is found over at sagebhobbs.com. And the show notes for today's episode with our guest's information and some of the amazing things she has to offer you, and a link to her TEDx talk are found at sagebhobbs.com/episode-43. Also, if you love the show, please consider subscribing and writing a review on iTunes. It makes a huge difference so that others can hear the show, so we get it out there to more listeners. Listening is free, and we want as many ears as possible to be inspired and motivated into impact and action from the stories we share. So you can do that over at iTunes and just search Naked Conversations and you'll find it. Today's guest is Susie Rinehart, and she is amazing. I know I say that about almost everybody I bring on the show, but her story really, really deeply touched and inspired me, and I'm so excited to share her work with you. She is an author, a TEDx speaker, a champion ultra runner, or she was an ultra runner. More on that in her story. She's a mom, and she's a brainstem tumor survivor. She began writing her Brave Over Perfect blog from her hospital bed and quickly became really an inspiration to those facing adversity. And she continues to inspire me and many, many others who cross her path. Susie's also just so incredibly kind-hearted and generous and smart. I just love getting to know her more, and I know that you will as well. She now co-runs the Brave Over Perfect project, which is an organization that teaches people to overcome perfectionism and proactively pursue risk. She is a champion of girls' education globally. She's traveled all over the world. She has a history as an educator, teacher, and running a very cool exploratory travel program for teens. You'll hear more about that as well. And she sits on the board of a nonprofit called Starfish, Her Infinite Impact. She lives here in town with me in Boulder, which is actually how we met. And her story is sure to inspire you to act more fully in how you live your life right now with a lot more grace and slowing down. I don't want to give it all away. We get into incredible, deep, real conversation today that I know each and every one of us can implement in our own lives right away, including an 11-minute ritual. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Susie. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Naked Conversations. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, and I have a really amazing guest today who is becoming a dear friend of mine, for which I'm really grateful because her story and her work is extraordinary. And I know that you will find huge inspiration from hearing her speak as well. So I have with me today, Susie. Hi, Susie.
Hi, Sage. Thanks for having me. This is so fun.
Super fun. I'm really glad we could figure out a time to make this work. So, Susie, your story has a lot of this component in it, which we will get into more. But I always start out by asking this question. What does courage mean to you?
Oh, great question. Okay, so courage used to mean to me to be able to get into something, roll up my sleeves, push through pain, keep going, run with a dislocated shoulder, pick up kids that are vomiting and keep going to work. And now courage means to me something different almost every month. And right now it means doing less, slowing down, feeling a way to sort of be myself without hustling and trying to please everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit more vulnerable and going in rather than out.
Awesome. Gosh, we could all use some of that. More vulnerability and slowing down and really, really paying attention. It's beautiful. Okay, so you have a story that has a ton of courage, in my opinion. And I'm really going to encourage everybody who's listening to watch your TEDx talk. We'll put it in the show notes because I think it's extraordinary. And I'm not just saying that because I love you. I've watched a lot of TEDx talks and it's beautiful and powerful. And it was very, very vulnerable and courageous. So I will put that for people to check out right out the gate. But for those who don't know you or the work that you do or your story, you've had quite a winding career and personal story that's led you to your current work. Can you tell us a bit about that and what got you to where you are now?
Sure. Let's just go back about 2 years. So 2 years ago, I was running a company that was a global education company, takes adolescents around the world, including Malia Obama. We got to take her to Bolivia. And before that, helping to run a small school and had 2 young babies and a wonderful husband. And then I was also a runner. I was winning ultra marathons and going for it in the, I would say, the trail running ultra marathon category. And then right after my birthday, about 2 years ago, when I ran an ultra marathon, I had a bad day, just put it that way. I was always someone who had headaches, but suddenly the headaches became very painful and I had nerve pain down my right arm and started throwing up one morning. So I went into the doctors and we did some scans and MRIs because she didn't like the combination of symptoms. I went in and discovered that I had a massive rare tumor on my brainstem and wrapped around my vocal cords. So suddenly everything changed. There was nothing I could do in this situation to kind of push through, right? I had to surrender to what was. And what was is that the classic story of you have 3 to 5 months to live and you need emergency surgery, but the surgery has never really been done because of where the tumor is and how complicated it is. So it was a moment for me that I recognized that I wasn't ready to die, but that also I took it in a strange way, because I'm always someone who's worried about health or like, oh, I'm getting MS because I'm nervous, or oh, I'm getting pneumonia because I'm coughing. You know, like I'm not a hypochondriac, but I definitely was someone who like worried a lot.
Before this happened.
Before this happened.
Okay.
So when this happened, I felt like, wow, this is not as bad as everything I imagined in my head it was going to be to have a medical crisis, which is a weird thing to happen, but that's literally how I felt. And the second part was, what a waste of my life. All that time I spent hesitating, worrying, doubting, judging, you know, that critical voice in my head that was always telling me I wasn't good enough. I was like, what a waste, what a waste. Those were the things that kept going through my head. So what immediately happened then was it was such a big medical healing crisis that we had to ask for help. And I also had to sort of come to Jesus, as they say. Like I had to realize like what I really, really wanted to do with life if I made it through this.
So you're sitting there in the doctor's office. I remember correctly, you had literally just in recent weeks won some crazy, I think it's crazy, ultra race. As somebody who can hardly get myself to run 3 miles. You had won a race. So you felt like you were in physical prime.
Right.
And you get this news and the thought that starts rushing in, besides the fear of mortality, what a waste of my life that I spent hesitating and thinking I wasn't good enough. So
it's going to sound weird. Keep going, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound weird. I just think it's amazing how our minds are rushing with thought all the time, right? Like, am I going to live? Am I going to die? What decisions do I need to make about that? And if I get to live, what does that mean from here on out? It sounds like there was just so many thoughts that came pouring in. What did that look like to decide how to proceed?
Right. And just to go back to your question about courage, right? It sounds like I wasn't someone who hesitated, right? Here I am running and pushing and
totally right,
charging and doing this international work.
Running an organization while raising kids and finding the time to run ultra trail runs. I mean, most people would say that's more than they accomplish.
Right. But it's that classic thing where what I really wanted to do, I really wanted to like eat toast and have tea with my kids. And I wanted to like go for long walks and write poetry. I wanted to write a book maybe one day and just slow things down. But I think I was too afraid that if I did that, then I wasn't adding value to the world. I didn't deserve to be here if I wasn't doing all of these things. I couldn't just run because I had to do really well, and that would validate all the time I spent training, right? And away from the kids. Or even for all of us who are moms and dads, for me, running was actually all about getting quiet time and going on trails and being in nature. But I couldn't just say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk now. I felt like if I was training for something, then it was okay to take the time away from the kids or from work.
Got it. Like the training gave you permission.
Exactly. So the difference of this, like, okay, I've wasted my life, was the voice inside me of the things I really wanted to be doing. I was pushing down and not listening to. So what happened, to go back to your question of what happened in this moment of you're going to die, I realized that I had to like listen really carefully to what this crisis was telling me. And, you know, there's this whole moment where I sent the family camping. I sat on my bed. I tried to meditate for 72 hours. I couldn't.
That's a long meditation.
I couldn't.
72 seconds is about as still as most people's minds can be.
Totally. But it really hit me that, of course, it was going to take something big. And what is the significance of it being around my vocal cords? Like, tell us about that. Tell us about that. Right. So that's where it started. The kind of catalyst for change was, okay, this is wrapped around my brainstem and my vocal cords. So, you know, the way I was thinking, did it move in there? Did the tumor get so big in there because it thought the area was abandoned? Did it think that I wasn't using my voice to say what I felt or what I wanted, but rather what I thought, like a good wife or a good director of a company or a good neighbor should say?
Wow. To actually ask how the location of your tumor affected your choices. It's wild.
Yeah. So
or
that's
reflected on them.
Hesitation. That's where I was like, okay, what would happen if I just said what I wanted to say, coming from my heart and coming from deep within me, rather than always from a place of like correcting or pushing or striving to be better and improve myself, my kids, my husband, what they had for breakfast, how they were doing their homework. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. And I think we spend a ton of time. It's subconscious a lot of the time, but we spend a ton of time wondering if we're doing it right. And if we're saying the right thing, doing the right thing, keeping everything checked off the to-do list. I talk to women about it all the time. Smart, bright, accomplished, big-hearted women who I started talking about this idea of like the empty to-do list. Like our to-do lists are long, but they're full of all the wrong things. And, you know, what would it be like if we actually like put attention, like actually put on our to-do list, call my sister and have like virtual tea with her, eat toast with my kids. You know, what if that was on our list? How would that shift things for us? So, and it's hard because we're super conditioned. We're super conditioned. This is not just a Susie thing or a Sage thing. We're conditioned, at least in Western space, like to really be a certain way as women, as mothers, as wives, as working women, right?
Right.
One of the reasons I love to share stories is because I want to learn from each other's stories. Like I don't want everybody to have, I had cancer too, right? Like I don't want everybody to have cancer to wake up. It doesn't have to be that way.
No. And I love your idea of the to-do list, the intentional one, you know, to write it down and put them first, put them at the top.
Right.
You know, not all of us can just like, oh, stop working or just have toast with our kids all day long, of course. But if we put it first, it would shift to something small and important in how we would run our lives.
Fully. And sometimes we have toast with our kids, but we're not paying any damn attention. So it's like by you put it on the list, it makes it an item, you know, like actually sit and have toast with my kids, not like fuel my face. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So, okay, walk us through this. You're sitting there, you're looking at your life, death literally laid out before you, and you're starting to question, have I wasted my time here? And why is this on my vocal cords?
So from there, I just started to use my voice in a way that felt very simple, but different. So when my neighbor asked me if I wanted to be the recycling coordinator for the street, this is all happening while I'm interviewing surgeons and like, you know, before I probably would have said, sure, I'll help. I'm pro recycling. But this time I was just like, no, thanks. And there was a lot of no's that happened. So colleagues who said, can you be part of this project? No. My husband, I used to sort of want to fix him. So if he was eating all the wrong things or not exercising enough, that's what I would say. That's how I would use my voice, which is, really, you're going to have 2 fried eggs for breakfast again? Instead of sort of waiting a beat and going deep into how I was feeling. And how I was feeling that morning was, hey, I have a headache that's killing me. I'm nervous about what's happening to my health. I'm feeling raw and cranky.
Yeah.
So maybe what I want to say is, hey, I don't feel great this morning. Can I get a hug? Right?
Yeah. Right.
Or more simply, hi, good morning. I love seeing you in the kitchen in my morning. Things that came from deeper than rather than just sort of this fearful voice of like, oh, well, a good wife should be monitoring her husband's cholesterol intake.
Right. And something trying to control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to control because everything else felt out of control. Right.
Right. Of course.
So little things like that. And then people who were close to me, who knew about it, inviting me to a movie to try to distract me and keep me lighthearted. And we go to the movie, and the movie was labeled a comedy, but was grim. It was they were like kicking dogs to death in the movie. So I just walked out.
Yeah.
And it felt like a small thing, but for me, that's not what a polite person does. You don't sit in a movie theater and then just like crawl over your friend's husband's lap to get out.
Right.
So I did that. And then the world didn't spin off of its axis. Everything was fine when I just started to listen to what I really wanted to say or do, including with the kids being really quiet when they were doing things that I thought were wrong or not the right way. Now, I mention all this because this was part of my healing. I mean, there was all the medical stuff that happened. I had to move to Boston. I went through 36 hours of surgery. We had 2 craniotomies of neck fusion. It took me 3 months of recovery after that and radiation, and I lost my voice.
I really want to hear about how you lost your voice, but I know people are also going, wait, what happened? So
I know.
Right, you lived this, but it's pretty astounding. Ultimately, you chose to do a surgery that really hadn't been done. You chose to take the risk of this surgery.
Yes.
And in order for that to be possible, you had to go across the country?
Yes.
And did your family come with you? How did you make that happen with the directing a company and all of the other pieces you managed in your life? I know people, that were managing a lot. What did that look like?
Right. Well, luckily, I had just transitioned out of my role at the company. So I was able to hand that off. And then everything else, we were moving quickly. So my family came with me for the surgeries, staying, again, one thing I would say to anyone facing something like cancer is, and I've heard you say this before too, that to ask for help and to get support. Because once we told people we were getting help in ways we didn't even know we needed. For example, a friend said, hey, I have a friend who has a house. You could rent their house. Go. So that's what we did. We stayed in a house in Boston, and insurance was actually good to us at this point, helped us with certain things, but not everything.
Yeah. Right.
So we went there, and then the decision came, do you want to just take out as much as the tumor as we can safely, or do you want me to try to take all of it out, knowing that you may lose your ability to swallow, to speak, to walk, to talk?
Oh my gosh, they asked you to make that choice. Okay. Yes. Really, they can't even guarantee what you'll lose or not lose. And they're saying, leave some of this malignancy in there or not. I don't know that part of the story, Susie.
Sorry.
Wow. What did you do?
I practiced my brand new listening skills. And I realized that I felt strangely peaceful and strangely confident, and said, I just want you to go for it. I want you to take it all.
Wow. So talk about courage.
Yeah. I don't know. It was more that I wanted the best chances of vital life with my kids. And I knew that if they only took pieces of it, that we would be back in there and a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are speaking to us. So you lost your voice.
Yeah. So here's the great thing.
Yeah.
I feel great. I have my voice back. I'm walking. I'm not running, but that's because I have a neck fusion that is from my skull to my shoulders. And that, gosh, sorry, listeners, but that was because the tumor basically ate away at the top of my spine and my skull.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to put in hardware there to keep it steady. So when I run, it just rattles things around. It's not that fun.
Yeah.
So that was a big piece to let go of because it was a big part of my identity. But
of course,
the bigger thing was that, I am here now. I have my voice back and my life back.
What was it like for that period of time when you literally couldn't speak? What was going through your head about the power of voice and in that time of silence? Because that's what I'm really listening to when I hear you talk is voice isn't all about what you say, but also what you don't say.
I think absolutely. In ways that nobody said, right? I'm a chatty person. I like to talk. But I didn't realize that in order to know what I really wanted to say, I had to do a lot of listening first. So when I didn't have my voice, first, there was a big empathy piece. I felt rage, actually. I felt deep anger for all the people who have been oppressed and voiceless for their lives. It made me want to be more actively involved in global women's issues or issues of race or issues of inclusivity. It just was powerful to not have a voice. Then the next thing that happened was I was forced to lie down and forced to listen. And I noticed that that's when I realized that the power of voice was also listening.
Yeah.
And I noticed how much of people's conversations were empty. I noticed how much people just said to fill air. And then I would write down these notes to my family about what I wanted to ask them. But they just wanted to tell me stories or sit by me or read to me. And it was a very sweet time, which I didn't expect.
Symbolic toast.
Yeah, exactly.
Really? There you were. Mm-hmm.
And then, for those who know me well, it was also very frustrating because I love to direct. And one moment, my husband came up to the bedroom where I was and asked me why I was surfing the internet on my phone. And I was actually looking for Olympic downhill skier Lindsey Vohn's workout schedule.
Okay.
Because in my mind, I was thinking, strong people get up and start doing more to heal themselves. So then I also wrote this long note to my doctor that I needed to see a speech therapist because I needed to learn exercises right away to get my voice back faster.
It wasn't like this transformation was automatic. You really were trying to default to your push through, figure it out, work hard, solve the problem mode.
Yeah, I like to think of it a little bit like the spiral staircase, where you kind of go up slowly, but there's a resorting back to where I was before. And
I love the spiral staircase analogy because you are going up, but you're circulating around sort of the same patterns, but then you're at the next level of them and the next level of them and the next level of them. It's beautiful. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. It was I thought when I did that pretend meditating for 72 hours, I learned.
Right. But there it was again, it was. Right.
Exactly.
And so how did that lead you? 2 years have passed. What has transpired? And tell us about your new project, Brave Over Perfect, and the pieces that have fallen into place to kind of share the lessons you learned from this extreme, I know for lack of a better way of saying it, a wake-up call.
Right. That's exactly what it was. It's a wake-up call. When I was alone with the diagnosis, those hours in the darkness of pretend meditating, I really thought about how I wanted to go forward. Mm-hmm. And that's when the words came to me that it's a choice. And I choose joy over fear and brave over perfect.
Say that again.
I choose joy over fear and brave over perfect.
Yeah. I mean, every time you say that, I'm like, I get the chills. I do. I'm like, I could really make that my mantra every day.
Well, every day, and that's exactly what it takes.
Many times a day.
It's not saying brave instead of perfect or joy instead of fear. It's really just a little calibration. Mm-hmm. Which voice is talking to me now? Is that the one who's worried and afraid and doubting and trying to keep up and hustle? Or what does the joyful voice have to say to weigh into this conversation right now?
Right.
You know?
A conversation inside yourself and sort of consciously shifting your attention.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, of course, it was very much related to medical things. What am I going to do? How am I going to choose with every choice? There's millions of choices that you have to make. And I just kept trying to stay focused on being afraid, but also tapped into something that was deeper and lighter and more powerful than the fear. And then in everyday life, right now, 2 years away, I feel great. So it's easy to get sucked back into the hustle and striving. And yet I have to sort of sit down every morning. I have my little 11-minute ritual that allows me to stop and listen and write a little bit, like morning pages that people do, to just listen to what it is that I want to do that day that is more about adding joy into my life. So today, no joke, it was talking with you.
Yay.
Which was a brave over perfect moment, right? Like, okay, much easier to not be public about this stuff.
Totally. Yeah, I really appreciate that honesty around that. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I found that I gained so much from this wake-up call that, like you said before, the last thing I want is for people to wait until they have a crisis to learn that they do have a choice too every day as to how to use their voices or how they can decide what to do with their time and with their love.
Mm-hmm. Or with their love. So let's go back to a couple things here. The 11-minute ritual, 11 minutes, that's sort of random. And you said they're morning pages as people do, but you know what? Not everybody listening to this is in Boulder who has like a morning practice and 11 minutes and things. I actually want you to, if you're willing to just share what that looks like a little bit for people who might be in crisis right now or have experienced recent trauma or are just feeling stuck or disengaged, resigned, because I too have found a morning practice to be super helpful for my anxious, busy, fast thinking, fast talking, fast moving inherent self. And mine is usually quite quick as well, but everybody does it slightly differently. And I really don't think I know not everybody does it. It's one of the first things I ask people to do when they work with me. So can you just speak a little bit to this 11 minutes and how it has made a difference for you in your Brave Over Perfect journey? Okay.
So I used to have an hour-long morning ritual. And
this goes back to like the 72-hour meditation and ultra marathons. Like, you're like, oh no, I know that I would do this longer and more and better.
Totally. And so the new Susie is like, okay, 1 hour means that I do it faithfully for about a week and then I don't for another 3 weeks and then I come back to it for a week. So what's the amount of time that I'm willing and able to give to make sure that the very first things I do in the morning are to fill me up and get in touch with what's going on emotionally for me and also just like inspirationally for me. So 11 minutes was what I was willing to give. So I do this 11-minute thing where I wake up and before anything else, I sit down and I do a sort of funky meditation that involves a little bit of singing and lighting a candle. It's not your typical just totally quiet meditation. It comes from the Kundalini tradition.
Okay.
And then I get up and walk to my desk and I sit down and I write in my journal what emotionally I am feeling. So not what I did yesterday or what I noticed in the morning about the weather, but rather just what am I feeling? Okay, I'm hurt. I felt unheard last night when I was trying to ask a favor of my husband. I feel a little bit jealous of so-and-so whose book is about to launch. I'm afraid because I have a medical checkup coming up. So it's a lot of that emotional processing. And I literally do that for just 2 minutes.
Yeah, like getting it out.
Yeah. And then the next part is like, I can write whatever I want after that. And then I go upstairs and I have like literally the hot water going so that I can have hot water with lemon, which is just my weird morning thing that's supposed to be good for you. And I do literally, I borrowed this from Christine Carter, a deep friend of mine and a coach as well. And she does the minimum effective dose of working out, which means 20 squats, 20 push-ups, however you can do them, and 20-second plank.
Okay, the minimum dose, girl.
Isn't that awesome? She calls it the MED, the minimum effective dose.
Yes, of working out. That's maybe the kind of working out I could do. That's awesome. I might have to add that in to mine. Okay. And that's your 11 minutes.
And on a good day, I'll do 11 minutes of each, right? I'll do 11 minutes of meditating and just being quiet and listening. And I'll do 11 minutes of writing and I'll do 11 minutes of working out. So 33 minutes. Like, I think we've all got that.
Yeah. Do you time it?
I do. I still have my fancy little ultra marathon running watch and I use it to now time 11 minutes.
Nice. That's awesome. You've transferred the tool to support you where you're at.
Exactly.
It's so good. Okay. So thank you for sharing that, because I really do think like they want to know what they can do, actually, what can I do right now to start embracing this idea of joy over fear, brave over perfect? How do you start your day? What does that look like for you? So thank you for indulging me on that. Another thing that came out of what you said that I just want to circle back to is this feeling of rage and deep anger for all who've been oppressed and silenced in their lives. And that, your voice is not just what you do, but it's what you don't do. And wanting to support and give voice to those who have not had one. Mm-hmm. So what has changed in the last 2 years in terms of that too, as you've moved more into health, even though I'm sure that that's always there in the underbelly, right? Of concern. What actions or steps have you taken to apply the brave over perfect, joy over fear, both to yourself and to others? Right.
It's a great question. You know what it did? It helped me focus my desires to have an impact and help out. So instead of feeling every single day like I need to help the victims of hurricane and fire and gun violence and oppression everywhere, I felt like for me now, I know what I want to do, which is I want to help people who don't have a voice. And in my experience, I have a lot of experience with education and with girls. And so then I focused my attention on organizations that are doing incredible work globally to get girls into school so that those girls can turn around and impact their whole towns and communities and get us out of poverty. So I backed off of a lot of other things, but I actually went deeper into that one and now sit on the board of an organization called Her Infinite Impact that is run by Indigenous women in Guatemala. And they do incredible work, including 12 weeks of vocal empowerment for the mothers, the sisters, the girls who are in school to help them author their lives with their voices. So that's one thing I've done. And then funny enough, you and I we met at a Moms Demand Action meeting where people working for really, let's change this game related to guns and violence. And can we do whatever we can as writers and as speakers to help get the word out there that this isn't something we need to just say we're helpless about. This is something really important for how we can shape our world. And we deserve to be heard as moms and as women and as human beings here in this culture right now.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I actually really feel like we were meant to meet and we kept meeting. The story of Susie and I, and we don't know each other that well yet, I say, but it was literally, we sat next to each other in a very full meeting in our community with Moms Demand Action after the Parkland shooting, I believe it was. Yeah. And you looked at me and you're like, I know you somehow. And I'm like, what? And okay, cool. And Susie was like already really kind of taking charge of the table group and really getting us focused, just like you mentioned, and centering your attention and energy to leverage the people in the room and make something happen. You had seen me online, which is funny because I'm not great at being online. Like you saw me doing that emerging women workshop. And then we were up in the mountains, literally on a hike a couple of weeks later. I'm in the parking lot of the YMCA and Susie's car pulls in. There's like 5 cars in the parking lot. And her car pulls in nose to nose with mine when I'm getting my daughter in the car. And I'm like, what? I just met you. This is so weird. And then again, I met you. I saw you at the event for the Pachamama Alliance with Lynne Twist up at Star House. And I swear we met maybe 3 times in a month. And I was like, okay, all right, I got it. Like, I got it, universe, whoever's speaking to me, like this woman has to be in my life in some capacity. then we learned, a mutual cancer story, background in education. I have a deep love of Guatemala and travel, and just kept feeling like the tapestry of our lives were woven together somehow. So it's just such a joy to hear you out there doing this work in the world that I think is so important, not just in sitting on the board, but also sharing of your story through the TEDx talk, the putting yourself out there courageously to talk about something that is actually quite recent. I mean, 2 years ago isn't that long. A lot of people would be more insular in their journey. And I feel like you've very bravely decided to make this part of your story have an impact. So tell us about the book and the projects that are coming out of the Wake Up Call.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. One thing that just comes to me about the story of us meeting is another example of trust, right? Like, I think I did my fast moving, fast talking, fast everything because I didn't trust that the universe would provide for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been taught that. We've been taught you got to hustle for your opportunity. It's not that we shouldn't take action. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is an interesting dance, right? Like, I don't think you can sit in your house when I was single before I was married. Like, I couldn't sit here and hope that Mr. Right was going to knock on my door. Yeah. You know what I mean? I needed to say to people, hey, I want to meet someone. Hey, I want to, I'm looking for love, Like, I had to let people know, but that's different. That's engaging. That's different than drive, hustle, drive, hustle. And I think that's interesting. This notion of the dance between hustle and flow, right? So anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. And just how they feel, right? Like when you close your eyes and you picture yourself with Mr. Right, you feel expansive and good and excited, right? About life.
Yeah.
Whereas when you close your eyes and picture yourself as head of the recycling committee for the neighborhood,
burdened, annoying. Right.
I know someone has to do it. Maybe have short rotations, but the point is I engage in things that I know down the line I'm going to feel deeply fulfilled and deeply in line with what I want. And then there are the moments where you just have to shut up and listen. Like you literally kept popping into my life and vice versa. Right. So then it's wow, well, my little curiosity is piqued. What is this about? So That's interesting. But then back to the book. So that was a curiosity piece where I had literally started to write a book that was a fictional character who was a little bit like Jane Goodall. She was a scientist who studied elephants in Africa. And she was amazing, much cooler than I was. And and then here's the weird part. In the book, anyway, she got breast cancer. And she returns to Vermont to heal and starts writing letters to her daughter about everything she wished she had known on how to live.
Yeah.
Well, so two things happened. I put the book away a long time ago because I was trying to make it perfect.
Yeah. Yep. As we do.
And I just didn't think I could do it. So it sat in a box on a shelf for a long time. And when this diagnosis happened, it is not glamorous, right? Like you're in waiting rooms of hospitals. I'm redoing my will.
Right. Oh, gosh.
You're in airports and waiting rooms. And it wasn't the time to write, but I felt deeply that that was something that I wanted to explore, that I would regret if I didn't do.
Yeah.
So I pulled that book out and then thought, what the heck am I doing writing about a fictional character? What I wish I had known as a daughter and a sister and niece was I wish I had known the stories of my aunt and my mother and my grandmothers. I wish I had known their struggles and their joys. So I started the book over basically and wrote a memoir about my experiences on how I looked on the outside of really accomplished, really doing well, and then how I felt on the inside, which was pretty empty and hollow and suffering with anxiety and depression. And then the book goes into the healing crisis and how that was a catalyst for me to reflect on what pieces of my life can I change to heal, and then also to be my best self. And that turned into this memoir, but that I just finished on Labor Day.
Woo! When you went on to writing, you submersed yourself in it. You left to really, really make it happen, right?
I did. And I can't say enough about that. I only left for 4 days. Like, I think most of us can pull that off.
Right.
But I left for 4 days and I just said, this is all I'm doing. I went to Trader Joe's and I got a ton of food and I never left the building except, I had a very disciplined little schedule. And I wrote for like 16 hours a day. And I decided that there was no going back. Like, I was going to finish on September 1st, if it was finished or not.
If it was finished or not.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished, and could it be better? It's in the editor's hands now, and they might want me to do months and months of edits, but I'm going to say no.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there's so much about that I love. Because, again, I wrote a book and it is not perfect. No. My book is not perfect at all.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you. And I made a choice to do it quickly, and some writers would say, no, let it marinate, let it come through you, sit with it. That just wasn't the energy of this book for me.
Right.
And when I was writing, my husband came up with the name in the middle of driving 5,000-mile road trip, Naked Communication. And I was like, wow, I think that's it. Like being real, peeling back the layers, little punchy, little edgy. I didn't like the formal ones, it's just not my personality, but it's so refreshing to hear you speak, Susie, and just to say, look, like, of course we can always do things better. Like, that's part of being alive. I hope, that we have better iterations, improved ways of seeing the world, expansive hearts, like opportunity for growth and evolution. I don't think we ever arrive.
Right.
So this idea of joy over fear, brave over perfect is like, well, I can tell you for damn sure it wasn't helping anyone when it just sat on the shelf. So my imperfect book now is in, I don't know how many people's hands. Every month I get a check from Amazon and I don't know who's buying it. And I just think to myself, okay, like if I read a review or somebody sends, it's just like, okay, well, that person got that. That imperfect thing helped them. That imperfect thing was enough. Would I like to do another one or a better one or improved version as time goes on? Maybe, but I did it. And I just love hearing you say, I'm not going to do the edits.
I'll correct spelling.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And I don't want to give people the impression I wrote it in 4 days. Let's be really clear.
No. This was coming for a long time.
With me for years and a long time coming. And like, as you know, that sometimes you need to get away from your life in order to just focus on that one thing. But then people get it off the shelf and put it on the bookshelf.
Right. Like we cannot serve and we cannot share and we cannot connect if we're hiding.
Right.
Okay. So now what's next? How do you see your story and your work making an impact? You already shared the beautiful board you sit on with Her Infinite Impact and the work you're doing there, but your own work and your own story, what do you see as the impact, the big vision?
It's the $1 million question right now. And so I am in a listening phase. I'm kind of in a paying attention, being curious to what happens. My 11-minute routine is a little bit like, okay, what's next? What's coming to me now has to do with speaking and writing. That I love coaching. That has been deeply fulfilling for me. So I want to keep doing that with men and women who are, willing to take their potential to another level and get good at listening to joy and listening to courage instead of fear.
Yeah.
But I think the next step is strange. I think it's going to be, where can I be the most use to people about expressing themselves genuinely, about this thing you were just articulating so beautifully about iteration? Like, are there ways that we hold ourselves back because we're trying to get it right? Where what we actually need as schools and as companies and organizations and individuals is to actually think about ways we can just do it and then iterate and improve it as we go, rather than waiting to get it perfectly right on the things that you're so good at articulating about, like asking for that raise or going into that next position or asking for what you want in the house.
Right.
Those are the areas I'm really interested in. Like, how can we have a brave over perfect revolution with our schools and with companies and with organizations where people really are going for it, but in a way that feels true to them?
Oh, I love this. How can we have a brave over perfect revolution? Oh man, what would that look like? Like what would change from there? It would be transformational.
I hope so.
And I also just love this. And I think listeners can ask themselves this wherever they're in their own life, which is, where can I be the most use to people? What a generous way to frame it, to really, really frame it. Like, how can what I have be useful? I'm taking that one with me, Susie.
Awesome.
Where can I be the most use to people?
As long as it resonates with you. Like, you could be really helpful on that recycling committee, but it might not resonate, right?
Totally. Right. Fully. That's been a struggle of mine as an entrepreneur, is like, everybody's like, niche down, tell them exactly what you do. You're going to help save their marriage. That'll make you have a huge business, because I've had a lot of clients who come to me with like very sensitive marriage struggles and infidelity and sensitive things. And I'm like, no, I'm not just that. I don't want to be just that. It's never been what I do. What I do is like, what is your true capacity? What are you actually capable of? And if you were living from that place, like, how could you love, live, and lead from there? That's naked, right? Yeah. And it's not niche, and it's not like pain pointy, and it's not all the things. We can be good at a lot of things. And so I don't want to choose just one.
Right.
I'm not going to, darn it. Just like you're not going to do all the edits. What?
I'm just wondering if my editor's listening right now. I'm sorry.
No, you'll be open-hearted. You'll do the ones that are resonant for you, but you're not going to do it just to make it perfect. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
One last question. First of all, I want everybody to know that we'll put the TEDx talk below. I'll put her below, meaning in the show notes, if you're listening, not looking at anything. And your book is not out yet. Do you know when it will be out?
Spring 2019.
Okay. So we'll be looking for that. Maybe when it comes out, Susie, you'll come back on the show and tell people about it. The last question that I have for you that it's just been niggling. So I'm going to ask, what would you say to women? I guess it can be men, but mostly I have a female audience. What would you say to women who want to show up and live less perfectly, but feel, overwhelmed or exhausted by striving and mothering and all the things right now? Like, if they're in it right now and they're like, I don't even know where to begin with this journey of living less, choosing brave over perfect. Like, what would you say to them?
Yes, I would say a couple of things. Number one, there is enough suffering in this world as it is, and you will have challenges that unexpected in your life that will come at you, that we cannot continue to have unnecessary suffering. So what I mean is, like, my mission is to rid the world of this needless suffering, of us doubting, worrying, being afraid of, oh, maybe I have a tumor because I have a headache too. Like, no. That's fear's voice talking. I just want to stop it in the sense of, when you start feeling all of those things, can you take a beat, like take a pause? Can you go to the bathroom, which is always our place where we can actually close the door and have a quiet for like 30 seconds and listen to what you're really feeling, which is, okay, I am afraid, but I'm also feeling like I should be doing more because I should be making more of an impact. Well, maybe what you're saying is you want to do more. So maybe you have to get curious about where you want to do more, rather than the shoulds and the scared voice that feels like you must do everything really, really well. So that's one. The other two things are, your to-do list idea, I think, is brilliant. And just to put your 11 minutes or yourself first. So that the very first thing I do in my day is to fill me up. And then I can start responding to the needs of others. But I've got to respond to my needs first. And if we frame our days that way, then we'll frame our years that way. Then we'll frame our decades that way. And finally, I think I was trying to do everything on my own. And then when it was good enough, I would show it to the world, or I would ask for help. And the linking arms with others. I could never do this work with the girls in Guatemala if I wasn't deeply just basically finding out what was already out there and then saying, hey, I want to be part of that. And I can only do this much, but this is the one I'm choosing to be part of. You do not have to invent the wheel. Just join up with people who are doing really good work. And when you link arm with others, we're exponentially more powerful.
Awesome. 3 beautiful ways to actually get started. Be curious about how you really feel and what you really want. Respond to your own needs so you take care of yourself and have full capacity, and link arms with others so you can really leverage communal impact. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's such an honor to listen to your story, and I'm so excited for your book and for all that's to come. And I know that those who are listening can relate to this beautiful battle cry, if you will, of joy over fear and brave over perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sage.
Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhabs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests, and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication: Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. Thanks again. See you next time.